Hello everyone, welcome to another book review. It's me, Alan, today here with my first Age of Sigmar book review. I will be looking at the brand new Malign Portents book. Now, on the back you see what you basically get. You get the rules for your heralds, you get the rules for the new realm of Shaiish, which is the realm of death in the Age of Sigmar. If you don't know too much about the realms of Age of Sigmar, the Warhammer community site has thankfully released a video that really explains it quite well, much better than I could possibly do. But to give the little 10-second explanation, it's basically this is where the god of death and all the dead people's souls go after they've died in the other realms. So you have a realm for each aspect. You have a realm of light, realm of heavens, realm of darkness, realm of death, realm of fire, etc. Basically, if it had a lore in the old Warhammer Fantasy book, it is now its own world. Though it should be noted that unlike what we first thought in Age of Sigmar, this is in fact a limited area. So that means that there actually is a purpose to fighting over them. You can only have so many people after all. You see some beautifully painted armies back here, but that's not what you're here for. You're here to hear my rambling thoughts on this book. Now, for those who... well, actually, I guess I've never mentioned it, because this is my first Age of Sigmar book review. Or first Age of Sigmar review of any kind. But I myself typically play the out-of-print armies of Bretonia and the Tomb Kings. You may have seen me, respectively, play those on Mini Wargaming if you subscribe to their channel. That is the same Alan. And this doesn't contain too much for me. But I also do hope to play Skaven, which is my current edition, which is hopefully what this will help out a little bit. First you see a Stormcast Eternal, haunted by the realm of Shaiish itself. Now I am going to kind of skip over the fluff a little bit here. That is mostly because I believe that if you enjoy the fluff of Age of Sigmar, the fluff of 40k, the fluff of Warhammer Fantasy, that you should go out and buy the books yourselves to support the actual Games Workshop itself. That probably sounds kind of shilly, and I understand, but I believe that if you like the rules, then any game company can make rules, any game company can make models. But if you like the lore, that's something only Games Workshop is going to make, so you should support that and keep it going. You get what I mean? So I'm going to skip right past the all the fluff stuff, and it's got how to use this book, which is cool. And I'm going to go right to the rules sections. So also you have these people called Stormcast Eternals. They're bastions of the god Sigmar, who's kind of the main god, hence the Age of Sigmar. And he's kind of a dick to Nagash, who's the god of death. And the god of death is kind of preparing a great vengeance, from what I understand, against what he's done. And you get a little explanation of what the Chaos Gods are doing, including Slaanesh, which is quite nice. I really like her, like fluff-wise, because, well, better to get pleasure than to get really sick, really confused, or really angry. You get the Dracoth War Queen. I do enjoy Games Workshop's recent focus on more female models. I hope they continue that. Fungoid Cave Shamans. I also enjoy them. And we'll use the term them for them because greenskins are monogendered. They are neither female nor male. You get a Knight of Shrouds, which is one of the coolest parts of fluff that I think. It's a Stormcast Eternal who's rejected Sigmar and turned instead to serve Nagash. Then you get upside down pyramids. You'd think Nagash would be smart enough to know which end went up on a pyramid. I guess, God of Death, he doesn't have to know things. I'm kind of hoping that eventually they bring back some of the Tomb King stuff for this. I don't have too much hope for my Bretonians, but hopefully, eventually, they'll be able to bring in some Tomb Kings to flesh out the death lists. If they did bring back Bretonians, I'd really appreciate it. Or even if they bring up some heraldry to add to your Flesh Eater Courts, I would collect that army in a second, because Flesh Eater Courts are kind of basically Bretonnia now. They all are so delusional, they think they're great knights instead of flesh-eating monsters. So here we are, the rules for playing in the Realm of Shaiish. You get a special spell, and, well, you get all sorts of special rolls. It's really fun. I'm kind of going to try and walk you through them. Obviously, you guys saw me just take the shrink wrap off this book, so I'm kind of walking through them, giving you my thoughts as I go. You get what I mean. You get that this is going to take a second. The Pall of Doom has a casting value of 6. On a successful cast, pick an enemy unit within 18 inches of the caster that is visible to them. That's an important distinction right there. Subtract 2 from the bravery statistic of this unit that you have picked until your next hero phase. That can be really powerful. Because if you're causing a battle shock test, especially on a low leadership army, like if you're causing it on clan rats, or if you're causing it on a free guild even, that's the Empire guys from 8th edition if you're an 8th edition player. That can be really, really good, because basically killing 2 extra models, especially on something like Storm Fiends, imagine that, or Rat Ogres, or regular Ogres even, because you're removing a huge multi-wound model for just a few points, or for a spell, not even for points. And then you have Honor the Dead. It is a command ability. If your general uses this command ability, pick a friendly unit that is within 12 inches of them and roll a dice. If the roll is less than the number of models that have been slain from the unit you've picked, add 1 to their attacks characteristics of the weapon until the end of the turn of all weapons used by that unit. So, that's so-so. I mean, you kind of want to use that on big unit, don't you? Yeah. So you want to use that on like a big, huge horde unit, but huge horde units don't tend to have great weapons. I guess like a Stormcast army would be pretty good, or what are they called? The Steampunk Dwarves. Those guys are pretty awesome looking. I don't know if they have good melee weapons. I understand they're good in shooting. And then, finally, you have Soul Force Sacrifice. This is actually my favorite when I was reading about this, and all the previews leading up to it. If your general uses this command ability, pick a friendly unit within 3 inches of them. Allocate any number of wounds to that unit. You can immediately heal 1 wound that has been allocated for your general for each wound that you cause your other unit to suffer. That is just awesome to me, especially if you play Skaven. If you're not using that command ability, you're not playing Skaven right. By God. I don't know, there's just something really fun about that. And it's a cool way of keeping your general alive. Especially death players, I feel, will find that incredibly useful. Because you're going to want to keep your general alive if you're playing death. And I trust me, I know how hard it can be against all the kids. Sorry guys, it's getting kind of late. But against all the character sniping that goes on in Age of Sigmar, that can happen a lot. And I myself am pretty guilty of it. Playing Skaven, you can get a lot of shooting from your clan rats. I'm going to ignore the Realmscape features because I have never used the actual terrain rules. So I don't want to give a completely uninformed opinion about that, okay? But they are there for you. I'm going to make sure the camera gets a nice big view of them. There we go. Just so you guys can read them in your spare time. If you guys play with those rules, and drop me a comment and let me know if those are good, if they're bad. I'd really appreciate that. So now you get the Power of Death. In order to determine the effects of the Power of Death in your games of Age of Sigmar, make note whenever a unit is slain on the battlefield at the start of the following hero phase, the player whose turn is taking place rolls a d6 and adds a 1 to the score for each unit, friend or foe, that has been destroyed in the previous turn. The player then consults the table below to see what the effect of the Power of Death has been in their turn. If no roll is made on a turn in which no units have been slain in the previous turn, for example, the first turn of the first round. That sounds really awesome. I love all these special abilities because these aren't favored towards one army or the other. They're just things to make your game even more interesting and even more random. I love randomness in my games of Warhammer. Not too much. Not like 8th edition demons or 7th edition Warhammer 40k demons. Even that's a little iffy with all their randomness. But quite a bit of randomness I enjoy in my games. So, the minimum you can get is a 2. Units on the battlefield, friend or foe, suffer a mortal wound. So everything on the battlefield just suffers a mortal wound. Just finishes off anything with 1 wound left. That's really cool. So, then you get, for 3, you can pick a friendly model and heal D3 wounds that have been allocated to it. Again, pretty powerful. Should be noticed that is 1 model, so that would be good on a hero or something, but you couldn't use it to, say, bring back some skeletons or some great swords. Then, for a 4, you get Arcane Surge, add 1 to all casting rolls. For a 5, you get the Kiss of Death. Pick an enemy unit on the battlefield, that unit suffers D3 mortal wounds. That can be pretty nasty. For a 6, Dance of the Dead. Pick a friendly unit and move it as if it was the movement phase. It cannot run when it makes this move, but it can move later on in the same turn. That's really cool, especially if you have like a shooting unit. You could move it up twice and then still shoot, or move it up twice and charge. That could be really powerful. Speaking to my own armies, imagine a unit of Bretonnian Knights suddenly scooting up the field 20 inches and then charging you on 3d6. Yeah, that could be pretty nasty. The Legacy of Nehek. Nehek, I believe, is, Nekakara, which is the home of the Tomb Kings. So that's an interesting little nod. I like that. Nehek, I believe, was the original province of the Grand Hierophant of the Tomb Kings, so the supreme spellcaster. I think that's pretty cool. That's a nice little nod. So pick a friendly unit that is not a hero, roll a d6. You may either heal that many wounds that have been allocated to that unit, or if no wounds are currently allocated to it, return a number of slain models. Pick a friendly unit that's not a hero. Return a number of slain models to the unit that have combined wounds characteristics of equal to or less than the number of wounds rolled. So it kind of is related to the Grand Hierophant, because the Hierophant in a Tomb King's army basically brings things back from the dead. I like that nod. I'm sorry, I like little nods like that, but that's cool. So this is the maximum you can get with just 1 d6 and 1 unit dead. So everything above this has to have more than 1 unit die in the phase. And that is unit, not model. So on an 8, you get Soul Drain. Pick an enemy unit on the battlefield and roll dice for each model in it. The unit suffers a mortal wound on a 5-up. That could be incredibly powerful. Imagine a 60-man unit of zombies. You're going to be killing 20 of them. That's powerful. Pick a friendly unit. On a 9, Unholy Vigor. Pick a friendly unit. The unit can immediately pile in and attack as if it were the combat phase. If you pick a death unit, it can also attempt to make a charge move as if it was the charge phase before piling in and attacking. Okay, I don't like this, because I don't like that it incentivizes one army over the other. I prefer these all just to be so plain that you can just use them for anything. Shame on Games Workshop. Even though it is the realm of death, I don't want death to have an advantage. Because then death players want to play this, and people don't want to play this against death. You know what I mean? So, that's a little bit frustrating. Then on a 10+, you get Cheating Death. Pick a friendly unit that has been destroyed, and whose models have a combined wounds characteristic of 10 or less. For example, a unit containing 1 10-wound model, 5 2-wounds models, or 10 1-wound models. So basically 10 wounds worth of unit. Set this unit up as a new unit anywhere on the battlefield that's more than 9 inches from the enemy. The unit cannot move in the following movement phase. Note, the controlling player does not need to pay reinforcement points for this unit in pitched battle games. That's really cool. I like that. That's how summoning should be, probably. Probably not that good, but you get my point. That's a really cool rule. I like that a lot. Ooh, and then we get the Malign Portents prophecy points. So, at the start of each battle round, so this is a completely separate system from these. So this can only be played in the realm of Shaiish. And then this is a completely separate system that you can add to any game you want, which is how I like it. I like crazy advanced systems. That's how I do. So, at the start of each battle round, players generate... At the start of each battle round, so this isn't once per game, players generate a pool of prophecy points that can be expended over the course of the battle round to interpret signs. Any unspent prophecy points are lost at the end of the battle round. To determine the number of prophecy points they generate, each player rolls a d6 and adds the following cumulative modifiers as appropriate. If the battle is being fought in Shaiish, which is this place, add 3. If a Harbinger, which is the 4 fancy new models, the Knight of Shrouds, the Fungoid Cave Shaman, the Stormcast guy, and the Dracoth War Queen, if those are part of your army, then you get an extra 3. If a hero from your army is garrisoning a War Scryer Citadel, then add 3, which is their new fancy terrain piece. I really like the look of it. And then, for every priest or wizard in your army on the battlefield, add 1. So that's pretty cool. Oh, and then Lord Ordinator is the Stormcast guy who's a Harbinger. And then you get your chart of guiding Malign Portents. So I will go through each of these. They look really cool. I'm already super excited about this, guys. I don't know if that's really coming across, but I am super excited for this expansion. So if you choose to interpret the falling star, you get the following. For 2 prophecy points, you get forewarned is forearmed. Interpret the sign immediately after failing a save roll for the interpreter. Re-roll that save roll. To interpret a sign, you have to have a hero. So that's the only restriction on this. It would have to be a hero unit. That's really cool, though. I like that, especially if you have a nice save that can be really nice. Then you get the Guardian's Truth for 3 prophecy points. Interpret the sign immediately after a friendly unit wholly within 18 inches of the interpreter suffers a mortal wound. Roll a d6 for each mortal wound, and for each mortal wound inflicted on the unit for the rest of the phase. On a 5-up, this wound is ignored. That can be really nice against like a Skaven Warp Lightning Cannon, or Skaven Warp Fire Throwers, or what are they called? The Beast Claw Raiders. They can really dish out mortal wounds too. So that'd be really good against them. So from what I've seen, the Falling Star is pretty defensive. Next, you get the Aura Mortalis for 4 prophecy points. Interpret the sign in your hero phase after rolling for the Power of Death table, which is this guy over here, so only if you're in the realm of Shaiish. Add 1 to the result. So it's after you roll, too. So like if you get a 9, you can spend 4 prophecy points and just get that 10, which is really nice. Then you get Portent of Fear for 5 prophecy points. Interpret the sign immediately after picking a friendly unit within 18 inches of the interpreter to shoot in your shooting phase. In this phase, add 1 to the hit rolls of that unit. That can be really nice. Again, the Steampunk Dwarves, I can't believe I'm not remembering their name right now. They're really cool. Or Tzeentch could use that really well. Skaven could use that decently. Bretonnians could use that amazingly with their incredible archers. And then you get the second sign of Amul for 3 prophecy points. Interpret the sign at the start of any combat phase. Pick a friendly unit wholly within 18 inches of the interpreter. In that phase, re-roll save rolls of 1 for that unit. That's, again, really powerful, especially if you have something that could have like a 2-up save. 2-up re-rolling 1s. You're basically not going to be taking any damage unless the enemy has rend. And then you get Superstition Proven Right for 1 prophecy point. Interpret the sign immediately after failing an unbinding roll for the interpreter. Re-roll that unbinding roll. So that could be really good if you really need a spell not to go off. Oh well, there's 6 of these guys. 5. The Bloodied Skull. For 3 prophecy points, you get the Precursor Wound. Interpret this sign immediately after your opponent allocates a wound to a model within the army that's within 6 inches of the interpreter. That model suffers an additional 1 mortal wound. So that's cool. You basically get a 2-for-1. For 4 prophecy points, you get Creeping Death. Interpret this sign in your hero phase. Pick an enemy unit wholly within 18 inches of the interpreter and roll a dice for each unit in that model. For each model in that unit, the unit suffers 1 mortal wound on each 6 up. So that's very similar to the basically the opposite of this guy over here. So that's pretty cool. But it is 4 prophecy points, but that could be pretty nice. For 2 prophecy points, you get Clawing Hands. Interpret this sign at the start of the opponent's movement phase. Pick an enemy unit wholly within 24 inches of the interpreter. In that phase, the unit cannot run, and its move characteristics is halved, rolling down. This sign has no effect on units that can fly. So that's, again, really powerful. Imagine doing that to your opponent's cavalry, who they're counting on for some armored support to the front immediately. That's kind of awesome. Then you get the Strata of Screaming Skulls. Interpret this sign at the start of any Battle Shock phase. In that phase, subtract 1 from the bravery characteristic of all units, friend or foe. If both players interpret the sign in the same phase, the effects are cumulative. So you could have -2 bravery across all your units. That might not be great for you, but it is only 1 prophecy point, so that's not bad at all. The Dead Walk the Earth for between 1 to 5 prophecy points. Interpret this sign at the start of any of your hero phases. Pick a friendly unit with a wounds characteristic of 5 or less that is within 6 inches of the interpreter. Return 1 slain model to the unit. The cost in prophecy points is equal to interpret the sign is equal to the wounds characteristics of the model you return to the unit. So, like, say you have a unit of Necropolis Knights, you'd have to pay 5 prophecy points because they're 5 wounds each. So that's pretty good, actually, though, still. Then finally, the Shield of Bones. Interpret this sign at the start of any combat phase. Pick a friendly unit wholly within 18 inches of the interpreter. In that phase, ignore the rend characteristics of the attacking weapons when making save rolls. That's really awesome. So this is kind of your damage dealing, but with a bit of healing and such still let on. So that's pretty exciting. The Black Void. For 2 prophecy points, you can Hastening the Inevitable. Interpret this sign in the movement phase. Pick a friendly unit, within 18 inches of the interpreter. In that phase, the unit can move as if it could fly. That's decent. Nothing too much to write home about there. Because that's only in the movement phase. That doesn't count charges and such. For 4 prophecy points, Doom and Darkness. Interpret the sign at the start of the opponent's shooting step. In that phase, the range of missile units is reduced by 6 inches to a minimum of 3 inches. That could be really nice, especially if you're sitting in the back lines trying to avoid your enemy's fire. Again, that's good against steampunk dwarves, Skaven, I don't know, certain units of Free Guild. Tzeentch, that's really powerful against, because that affects all the weapons on the field. For 3 prophecy points, you get Ashes and Dust. Interpret the sign at the start of your opponent's hero phase. In that phase, the range of command abilities is reduced by 6 inches. That could also be really powerful. I'm not too familiar with different command abilities because I just generally use Inspiring Presence, because I find that's the best for the armies I run most of the time. But that could definitely be powerful on some of the big legendary lords. For 3 prophecy points, you get Jaws of the Trap. Interpret the sign in your charge phase. Pick a friendly unit that has retreated earlier this turn and is wholly within 18 inches of the interpreter. In that phase, this unit can still make a charge move. That's incredibly powerful. Skaven get that as a special ability, but, and let me tell you, that can really screw up your enemy's plans, because you just run out of combat, a disadvantageous combat, and charge right back in. Or your Bretonians, or Chariots. You can just pull out and just throw your units right back in. Invisible Ghosts for 1 prophecy point. Interpret this sign. In a hero phase, pick an enemy unit that's within 12 inches of the interpreter, and it is on or garrisoning or is within 3 inches of a terrain feature. That unit suffers a mortal wound. That's very specific for a very low amount of damage. So, not going to probably be using that one too much. And then lastly, you get the Hellschnat Clips for 5 prophecy points. Interpret this sign at the start of any hero phase. In that phase, add 2 to the casting rolls and reduce the range of the spells by 6. So if your units are already nice and close together, that seems like a really good one to take. Whew, that's taking a minute. I gotta just flip over the clip real quick. Give me 2 seconds. And we're right back to it. So next you get the Bale Moon. For 2 prophecy points, you get Sum of All Fears. Interpret the sign at the start of any battle shock phase. Pick an enemy unit wholly within 18 inches of the interpreter. In this phase, subtract D3 from that unit's bravery. That can be incredibly good. Especially, again, against low leadership units. Beastmen, Skaven, Bretonnian Peasants. Yeah, Free Guild. Free Guild are pretty shitty leadership. You get Shades of Death for 4 prophecy points. Interpret the sign at the start of any combat phase. Pick an enemy unit wholly within 18 inches of the interpreter. In the phase, subtract 1 from hit rolls for attacks made by that unit. That's incredibly good. Because anything that you have going off on a hit roll of 6 now just won't go off. Ever. So, yeah, use that on a unit that has something to do on a hit roll of 6. For 5 prophecy points, you get the Weeping Moon. Interpret the sign at the start of your opponent's turn. In this turn, subtract 1 from the move characteristics and from the run and charge rolls for all enemy units. It's really good. I don't know if it's 5 prophecy points good, but pretty good still, I'd say. You get the Siren Screams for 3 prophecy points. Interpret the sign at the start of your opponent's movement phase. Pick an enemy unit wholly within 18 inches of the interpreter. In the phase, the unit cannot retreat. That's pretty cool. Again, not 3 prophecy points. Cool. I'm probably going to take a mulligan on the Bale Moon. For 1 prophecy point, you get Ravaging Hunger. Interpret this sign in any battle shock phase. Pick an enemy unit wholly within 18 inches of the interpreter. After 1 or more of the units has fled as a result of a battle shock test, and another model immediately flees. Okay, that might redeem the whole thing, because that's an incredibly cheap unit. And against ogres, against storm fiends, against, Chaos Chosen, against Chaos Knights, against regular knights, against Demigryph Knights, a single failed 1 model running away is devastating, but suddenly doubling that and making it 2, that's incredible. And then Don't Go Out Alone for 3 prophecy points. Interpret the sign at the start of your opponent's movement phase. Pick an enemy unit wholly within 18 inches of the interpreter that is more than 6 inches away from any other enemy models or enemy units. This unit suffers D3 mortal wounds. That's pretty cool. It's, again, pretty specific, but also pretty cool. And a good outlet for damage. Next, let's go for the Withering Serpent. The Withering Serpent. Oh, for 2 prophecy points, you get the Black Spot. Interpret the sign in any combat phase, immediately after picking the interpreter to fight. Pick an enemy hero within 1 inch of the interpreter. In that phase, reroll wound rolls of 1 for attacks made by the interpreter against the targeted enemy hero. That's powerful if convoluted. That's the best I can say about that. This seems to be a buffing one so far. Malaise Made Manifest. Interpret this sign for between 3 to 5 prophecy points. Interpret this sign in your hero phase. Pick an enemy hero within 6 inches of the interpreter. Roll a number of dice equal to the number of wounds that are currently allocated to that model. For each 6 up, the model suffers 1 mortal wound for the cost of 3 prophecy points. The sign costs 3 prophecy points, and it costs 5 if you target a monster hero, so like a zombie dragon, or a Free Guild General on Griffin, or things like that. anything that's a monster and a hero takes 5 prophecy points. But they can still be pretty potent. That's really good, actually. I take that every day. So then, False Potent. Interpret the sign immediately after an wizard casts a spell. The interpreter can attempt to unbind that spell as if they were a wizard. It's pretty good. I'd take that. Because it doesn't say anything about range. So, yeah. Free dispelling from the back ranks. And then No Rest for the Wicked. Interpret the sign in the opponent's charge phase. Immediately after they make a charge roll for a unit that's wholly within 18 inches of the interpreter, your opponent must re-roll that dice. That can be incredibly powerful because a single charge can make or break the game at times. Especially on a deep struck-in unit that's 9 inches away. Boom. Perfect. Thrive in Adversity. For 3 prophecy points. Interpret the sign in any combat phase after picking a friendly unit to fight that's wholly within 18 inches of the interpreter and has 1 or more wounds allocated to it earlier in the phase. In that phase, add 1 to hit rolls for that unit. Yeah, I take that, because anything that's going off on a 6-up is now going off on a 5-up. Or if you've already got +1, now it's going off on a 4-up. So, yeah, for sure, throw it on one of those units, along with some other buffs, and boom, you're going to be just annihilating anything else in combat. Dazzling Insight as the big topper for 5 prophecy points. To interpret the sign in your hero phase, subtract 1 from hit rolls made by enemy units while they are wholly within 9 inches of the interpreter. Yeah, no, absolutely, I'd take that. If you're in the middle of close combat, pick that guy, throw it up. Because it doesn't say they have to be targeting the interpreter. It just says they have to be wholly within 9 inches, which is a pretty decent size. And then this, just wanted to make this note, this one seems to be really good if you have a lot of prophecy points in your army already, because things seem to be expensive on this one. Oh yay, and we're at the end. The Red Mist. You get Knowledge of Dark Lightning for 5 points. To interpret the sign in your hero phase, pick an enemy unit wholly within 18 inches of the interpreter. That unit suffers D3 mortal wounds. Boom, just D3 mortal wounds. Yeah. All day, every single day. For 1 prophecy point, Deadly Swarm. Interpret the sign in your hero phase. The closest enemy unit, wholly within 12 inches. If the interpreter suffers a mortal wound. For 1 prophecy point? Absolutely. I mean, that could be a little bit random, but still, that's a free wound for 1 prophecy point. That's cheap and useful. For 4 prophecy points, you got the Wind of Death. Interpret the sign in your hero phase. Roll a dice for each unit, friend or foe, on the battlefield. On a 6-up, the unit being rolled for suffers a mortal wound. I don't see why that's 4 prophecy points, because that's incredibly dangerous to you as well as the enemy. Wouldn't fire that off unless I was desperate. Then you get Entangling Black Roses for 2 prophecy points. Interpret this sign in your opponent's movement step. Immediately before they retreat with a unit wholly within 18 inches of the interpreter, your opponent must choose for that unit to either remove stationary this phase or retreat as normal. If they choose to retreat, the unit suffers D3 mortal wounds. It's nice. I take that, especially against somebody using the one where you can retreat and charge. Yeah. I take this for sure. So this is basically a bunch of extra spells and stuff. I like that. I like more like list building with Age of Sigmar. Then you get Cold of the Grave for 3 prophecy points. Interpret the sign in your opponent's charge phase immediately before they make a charge roll for a unit wholly within 18 inches of the interpreter. The charge roll is reduced to 1d6. Yeah. Again, that can make or break a charge. It can make a lot of charges actually impossible. So, yeah. Something that got deep struck in, impossible. Then you get Deathly Sandstorm. Interpret the sign for 3 prophecy points. Interpret the sign at the opponent's shooting step. In that phase, subtract 1 from hit rolls from enemy units that are wholly within 12 inches of the interpreter. That can be pretty good if you're closing with enemy gun lines. Not too much to say on that one. It doesn't really seem to work that well. For me, at least. And then you get rules about Skirmish, which I don't play. I'm sorry about that. With some Artifacts of Power and some command abilities. I'm just going to bring them up to the camera real quick. You guys can see again, I don't play Skirmish. I'm sorry, guys. Actually, I haven't had a good game of Age of Sigmar in a while, unfortunately. And then Rewards of Battle and Magic of Shaiish for Skirmish. And then we get some Skirmish battle plans. Again, I'm just going to skip past these, because I don't want to give you guys an uninformed review. Okay. So you get a special... Ooh, what is this? Cool. So you get a special prophecy thing if you bring the different... What are they called? Man. Sorry. Well, if you bring the special guys from Malign Portents, basically the Harbingers. There we go. So, all the War Scrolls are available for free online, so I'll let you guys look at those. I think the Lord Ordinata is amazing. Don't think too much of the War Queen. I think he's really good for his... It is really good for their cost. And I don't know how to feel about the Knight of Shrouds. I really don't. But let us look at the... Well, just as I got through them, too. At the, these new guys. So this is for the Stormcast and the Lord Ordinata. For 5 points, you get a Sign of New Guidance. Interpret the sign at the start of any hero phase. Before interpreting any other signs of the phase, you may choose to roll a dice to determine the new guiding Malign Portent for your army. Okay, that's pretty cool. Since it is random, what Malign Portent get, that can be pretty powerful. And you get these in addition to the other signs. So not instead of the other signs. For 3 prophecy points, you get the Sign of the Star Drake. Interpret the sign in your hero phase to generate an additional d6 prophecy points. So it costs 3 prophecy points, and it generates d6. So that means you're basically wagering 50-50 that you're going to get more prophecy points than you put in. In theory, you could really gamble this one up, but it should work, actually, most of the time. Well, not most of the time. It'll work half the time, so... Knowing my luck, it would help every single time, because unlike most YouTubers, I actually have really good luck when it comes to Warhammer. And for 2 prophecy points, you get Sign of the Hammer. Interpret this sign in any combat phase after picking the Interpreter to fight. In this phase, the attacks made by the Interpreter's astral hammers have a damage characteristic of 2, so that's his weapon. Sign of the Astral Choir. For 2 prophecy points, interpret the sign at the start of any battle shock phase. In that phase, add 1 to the bravery characteristic of friendly order units. It's pretty good. I like things that increase bravery. Sign of the War Scryer. For 2 prophecy points, interpret this sign at the start of your hero phase. Pick a War Scryer citadel wholly within 18 inches of the interpreter. You may pick a result from the War Scryer's Castlium construct table to apply, which I didn't look at because I don't look at scenery stuff, so that means nothing to me. Sorry, guys. I'm sure other YouTubers do have a more thorough review of those sections. I'm just trying to kind of give you my opinion, mostly on this stuff, to be honest. I like this stuff. Sign of the Twin-Tailed Comet, which we all know is actually a Skaven in a rocket ship, so I don't know what this guy's looking at. For 5 prophecy points, you get to interpret the sign in your hero phase. Pick an enemy unit anywhere on the battlefield. That unit suffers D3 mortal wounds. D3 mortal wounds plus 1 if the unit is a chaos unit. It's just a straight up better version of what other things do. Go Stormcast. Then we get the Dracoth War Queen and what she gets to bring. So she gets the same sign of New Guidance. I assume they all have Sign of New Guidance. Yep, they all have Sign of New Guidance, so I'll just skip over that one from here on out. Then you have the Sign of Bloodletting, so I assume that's Khorne. For 3 prophecy points, interpret this sign in any combat phase after picking the Interpreter to fight. In that phase, the Interpreter's Warlord axe has a damage characteristic of D3 or D3 plus 1 if the target is an enemy hero or monster. So that's her weapon. Then you get the Sign of Prophecy, which is, I assume, Zinch. And for that, you get Interpret the Sign in your hero phase to generate an additional D6 prophecy points. That's very Zinchian. Sign of Pestilence, which is obviously good old Grandpappy Nurgle. Interpret the sign in your hero phase. Pick an enemy unit wholly within 7 inches of the interpreter. Pick an enemy unit within 7 inches of the interpreter. Roll a number of dice equal to the number of prophecy points that you choose to expend between 1 and 5. For each 4 up, the enemy suffers 1 mortal wound. Yeah, that's really good, especially if you have a bunch of extra prophecy points left over. Grandpappy Nurgle, he delivers. And then the Sign of Mantic Lee, which is probably Glorious Slanesh. Interpret the sign at the start of any battle shock phase. In that phase, friendly chaos units wholly within 12 inches of the interpreter do not have to take battle shock tests, and that's 3 prophecy points. Yeah, no. Slanesh, she's a good person. Well, no, she's not. She's absolutely not. That's kind of her defining characteristic, is that she's not a good person. But she backs you up when you're on the battlefield in her name. That's nice, at least. And then the Sign of Verminous Warpfire. So this is from the Great Horned Rat himself. Interpret this sign at the start of your hero phase. In that phase, you can attempt to cast Arcane Bolt with the Interpreter as if you were a wizard. That's 2 prophecy points and a small brick of cheese. Don't forget that brick of cheese for the Great Horned Rat. He will remember your face if you don't. You don't want that guy remembering your face. Then we get the Fungoid Cave Shaman with the signs from Gorka Morka. I like that name. I like the craziness of orcs. I would never actually play an orc army, but I like the craziness of orcs. So you get the Sign of Gork. For 4 prophecy points, interpret the sign at the start of any of your charge phases. Pick a friendly destruction unit wholly within 18 inches of the interpreter. In that phase, you may re-roll charge rolls for that unit. In addition, re-roll hit rolls of 1 for that unit in the following combat phase. Gork is pretty awesome. But let us see what the Sign of Mork has. For 3 prophecy points, you may generate an additional D6 prophecy points. Mork doesn't hold out. Go with Gork every time. The Sign of the Great Wall. For 3 prophecy points, you get to interpret the sign at the start of any of your charge phases. Add 1 to charge rolls for friendly destruction units wholly within 24 inches of the interpreter. That's really good, especially because you could probably combine them together if you've got the points for it. And then you have the Sign of the Evil Sun. Interpret the sign at the start of any battle shock phase. In that phase, add 1 to the bravery characteristics of friendly destruction units and subtract 1 from the bravery characteristic of enemy units. That's really good. I like that. For 5 prophecy points, I don't even think that's really overcosted. I think bravery plays a big purpose in Age of Sigmar that most people overlook. And then we have Sign of the Death Cap. For 2 prophecy points. Interpret the sign in your hero phase. If the interpreter consumed their Death Cap mushroom in your previous hero phase, the effects of the Death Cap mushroom last until your next hero phase. You can use this sign again in future turns to maintain the Death Cap's effects even longer, provided you have sufficient prophecy points to do so. So let us quickly look up what the Death Cap mushroom does. Once per battle in the hero phase, you may choose for the Fungoid Cave Shaman to consume a Death Cap mushroom. If you do so until your next hero phase, you cannot attack with the model's Moon Sickle, but you can reroll casting, unbinding, and save rolls for this model, and cast an additional spell. So yeah, keeping this up through the entire game, that seems really good. And then, finally, we have signs from the Great Necromancer, who we all know is Cetra. Surprisingly, Cetra seems to have a bit of a Nagashi feel to his stuff, so, who am I to judge? And he's just feeling a little glum today. For 2 prophecy points, you get the Sign of Endless Torment. Interpret the sign at the start of any battle shock phase. In that phase, subtract 1 bravery characteristic from enemy units while they are within 12 inches of the interpreter. Again, I like stuff that affects bravery, and 2 prophecy points is pretty cheap for it. You get the Sign of Death's Triumph, which is the traditional D6 prophecy points gamble thing. And you have the Sign of Dead Flesh. Interpret the sign in your hero phase, heal a number of wounds allocated to the interpreter for an equal number of prophecy points you expend, up to 4. So yeah, no, that's really cool, especially because it's the Knight of Shrouds, so you just get to heal them up, basically. Every turn, if you'd like. And then you get the Sign of Balefire Touch. Interpret the sign in your hero phase, pick an enemy unit wholly within 3 inches of the interpreter. That unit suffers D3 mortal wounds. Awesome. Especially for 4 prophecy points. The other ones tend to be 5 prophecy points. Sign of the Geist. Interpret this sign in your hero phase, pick a friendly death unit wholly within 18 inches of the interpreter. For the rest of your turn, that unit can fly, and you ignore the attacking unit's rend characteristics when making save rolls for that unit. For 5 prophecy points, yeah, I'll still take it. I'll take it every day. Sorry folks, as usual, my camera ate through some more batteries. These aren't fresh batteries, so who knows how long these final thoughts are going to last. And, so anyway, here you have the pitch battle profiles. I feel like I should kind of start what's it called? Patreon for batteries or something. Anyway, what do I think of Malign Portents? I believe that Malign Portents is an excellent book if your group uses the rules. So if your group is interested in getting into Warhammer Age of Sigmar in the realm of Shaiish, I think this is an excellent book for you guys. I highly recommend. Highly. Very. 2 thumbs. Look at that. Double thumb.